So today we'll talk about impeachment. So you just need to type three things that are significant. And it's important to know that impeachment, we often hear that word and we think it means a government official has been fired or taken out, but that's actually not true. Impeachment itself is just the first step of the process, and it involves basically just charging someone. This starts in the House of Representatives, and this is also true, by the way, in the state legislatures in most cases. And the House of Representatives receives some type of grievance or complaint from a House member. Then they submit this to the Judiciary Committee of the House. And the Judiciary Committee, as the name implies, involves similar functions of the Justice Department or the judicial branch. They're going to investigate these charges to see how true they are. And they will hold hearings and call witnesses and gather evidence, just like they would when they're researching a bill. And of course, by the time this committee hearing happens, it's very much a public event to the press, and a large amount of the public is going to be aware and paying attention while this is happening. That was true in the last set of impeachment trial impeachment investigation, because it involved Russia and some national security issues, and so it was a very sensational story. The House committee then basically decides how to recommend the impeachment. They can either vote to recommend it or not, and that's just with a simple majority of the committee. And then after the committee votes on that, it goes to the House floor. And the president or the judge or a cabinet member, whomever is being impeached, has the right to have people defend them. And they can negotiate with the House, but most likely it's going to be House members of the same party that will defend them. And if they're able to negotiate it, they might have one of their attorneys included as well. And then obviously it's going to probably be the opposition party that prosecutes and presents evidence to the entire House. And the House basically acts like a grand jury. They're going to have a majority vote and decide if the charges should actually be levied against the individual. But that just means they've been charged. It doesn't mean they've been found guilty or there will be any punishment, because it then has to actually go to trial in the Senate. And in the Senate, they act as the final jury. And it isn't just a simple majority. 2/3 of them have to vote in approval of actually convicting someone and then carrying out some kind of consequences like removing them from office. Same thing, the House team for both sides comes over, the prosecutors and the defenders, and they present evidence to the Senate, who is the jury. After they both have their presentations, the senators work out an arrangement where they take turns asking individual questions. Usually this is done by writing down the question on a piece of paper and sending it up to the desk of the presiding officer, and they're the ones that gets to ask it. And then one of either the prosecutor or the defender, depending on who the question is asked to, will get to answer. Then the Senate will take a vote, perhaps after they allow time for speeches from the individual senators. And if 2/3 vote in favor of it, then the person will be removed from office. The Senate also has the ability to ban them from ever running from office again. So that is possible as well. Now, throughout American history, there have been 20 people that have been impeached altogether, including 3 presidents and I guess all but one of the other ones were judges. They attempted to impeach and remove a senator, but it was ruled that, of course, was not allowed, because in the Constitution it says the Senate should expel its own members. There's no need to impeach and remove. So the first person that they attempted to do it to, it turned out it didn't apply. But the rest have been judges and 3 presidents. And some of the reasons why they have actually been found guilty, 8 of them have been found guilty and removed from office, all of them judges, include reasons like abuse of power. They were using their office to make personal gains. They were taking bribes. They were making deals with plaintiffs who brought cases before their court, or they were acting in a lewd and disorderly manner in public, breaking the law. For instance, today they'd be charged with disorderly conduct. Or they were purposely avoiding their courtroom. For instance, there's one judge who, when the South seceded, he basically said, well, then the country doesn't really matter anymore, so I'm not going to report to court. So they decided to impeach and remove him as well. And there have been 8 people that were acquitted. They were found not guilty, basically, and that includes the 3 presidents. And there are 4 people who decided to resign before it actually went to trial. The 3 presidents would include Andrew Johnson, who was president right after Lincoln. Lincoln had put him on the ticket because he was a Southerner who stayed loyal to the Union, but obviously the Northerners in Congress really hated him a lot, and there are probably some good reasons for that. But they passed a law saying that he couldn't dismantle any of Lincoln's cabinet, so of course the first thing that Andrew Johnson did was he fired one of Lincoln's cabinet just to kind of test the law. So they decided to impeach and remove him, but the Senate kind of thought that they had entrapped him, that this was kind of bait, and some doubted the constitutionality of the law, that he couldn't fire whomever he wanted. So they ended up acquitting him. The next one would be Bill Clinton. In a civil trial, a lawsuit where he was being sued for sexual harassment, he was asked, of course, about other affairs that he had to prove that he was a philanderer and a pervert, basically. And he denied that he had relations with Monica Lewinsky, a White House intern. Of course, lying under oath is called perjury, and it's a crime. And so this also got impeached, and when it got sent to the Senate for the actual trial, once again, a majority of senators said it is a crime, but it doesn't seem to meet the threshold of what the Constitution says, which is high crimes and misdemeanors, which means abuse of power. And it wasn't really clear that him lying about having an affair in a private lawsuit really had anything to do with him being president of the United States. And so they acquitted him. And then the last one would be Donald Trump, who had alluded to in a phone call that possibly money to the Ukraine that was authorized by Congress to help them out in some of their civil strife would be withheld unless they didn't provide more information about Vice President Biden's son Hunter, who had been involved with a company there. Now, in the phone calls, President Trump never actually said, I am purposely going to withhold the money unless you do this. So really, there wasn't actually proof that he did it. Could he have? Maybe. But once again, the actual words weren't said. And so the House did impeach him. But once again, the Senate decided not to remove him. One of them was abuse of power, one of the charges. The other one was for not cooperating with Congress in the investigation because the president refused to turn over evidence. But Congress decided not to convict him Senate decided not to convict him for that either. The problem with impeachment, of course, is President Trump once said I could probably shoot someone and I wouldn't lose any support. And that's probably true, because if you actually did commit a crime as president and you were caught on video, if your party controlled enough seats, just a little over a third, you can block being removed from office. And so some people say that is a flaw. Another flaw is, of course, the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors is kind of confusing and vague. It doesn't really say anything in particular. But of course, you also can't amend the Constitution and list 5,000 different crimes. So it's kind of a problem either way. And one other thing I forgot to mention, of course, in the case of a president, the vice president does not lead the Senate, since obviously he would have motivation to make sure the president's removed from office. So in that case, actually the Chief Justice presides over the Senate. So that's just a little bit about it. It works in an extremely similar way at the state level, except obviously it involves the state house and Senate, and the presiding officer can either be the lieutenant governor or the president pro tempore of the state Senate.